A tragic youth suicide cluster in Northland has highlighted serious gaps in how at-risk youth are supported. A recent coroner's inquest found that fragmented services left young people without a clear path to help, and it has set out a series of recommendations to stop it from happening again. Psychologist Sarah Chatwin is here to talk the findings. Look, thank you so much for being here this morning, Sarah. I mean, this is a terrible case, but I mean, effectively, these young people appear to have been lost in the system. Is this a Northland-specific problem, or is it more nationwide?
Firstly, feelings and prayers go out to all the families who have experienced this kind of loss with their youth. Rangatahi, it is just such a tragedy having these beautiful people lost to us forever, but I do not think it is just a situation that is only in Northland. I mean, we have seen these statistics rising over the years, and, you know, for all intents and purposes, people like myself and several others have been saying there is care in place, but there is no continuity of care. And clearly, when you see youth going before 13, 14 to 17 services to try and find the right kind of fit for them so that they are, you know, supported on their journey to mental wellness, this isn't working. There are a lot of services, nothing is resonating for these kids. So clearly there's a shake-up, and the coroner made some, you know, really good suggestions in terms of getting continuity of care through a system that is transparent and that communicates.
Yeah, so just to back up the truck a bit, one of the key failings, it appears here, is that there were various agencies involved, yes, but they were all operating in silos. There was a lack of information sharing, correct?
No continuity of care. So yes, the right arm didn't necessarily know what the left arm was doing, and although I'm sure people went into these situations with the best of intentions, the care is just not getting through to the people who need it in a form that is acceptable and accessible to them.
To what extent are part of these issues the lack of workforce, the pressures on the existing workforce and the inability to, assist young people, or being oversubscribed?
Well, absolutely. The lack of resourcing. People, I'm sure, in these positions are trying their hardest, but there are only so many hours in a day, only so much funding. So there are limitations across the board, and I think the coroner was, quite rightly pointed that out.
And the coroner, that recommendation essentially to bring together the agencies so we have a sort of central navigator agency. How could that improve things, and does it need to happen urgently?
I think it does need to happen urgently. That would be the best case scenario, but you are dealing with a lot of people coming at things from a lot of different perspectives. You have people saying that this works for me and that works for me and that doesn't work for me. So there's so much information that we need to take on board. But far be it from me to suggest, focus groups and think tanks, because we don't need that. We need action now because these statistics are just rising.
Yeah, and can you just explain for our viewers this morning, I mean, what are the sort of signs to look for? Because from what the coroner has said, all of these young people displayed similar issues. There was bullying, there was self-harm, in some cases there was substance abuse.
Yes.
So what do you do? What do you do?
Well, of course, parents have to look at their children and keep those pathways of communication open from the get-go. So if you are a parent and you are finding that your child is exhibiting behaviours that are alarming or concerning, if you see, cutting or scarring or anything that makes you concerned about your child, and as a parent, you act, then the child goes to school and perhaps, the educators notice behaviours, and so they need to act. I think it's about communicating and acting, and making sure that you don't just communicate and not act, taking it to the next level, and then perhaps the teachers working in with the people at the next level, that may be the counsellors. And if there needs to be some acceleration, keeping a handle on those steps. It just seems to be that people weren't putting the right services in at the right time, or even the youth they didn't feel like they had a voice to say when they were encountering the difficulties that obviously they have encountered.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my observations is, you have these coroner's reports, you have these big stories on these tragic situations, and then everything just sort of seems to go quiet.
Yes.
I mean, what needs to happen now to ensure that we actually get something in place and it's not just talked about and recommended by the coroner? I mean, who needs to lead that action?
Well, personally, I think the coroner was saying some really influential and important things, and they seemed to have a handle on the need for this transparency, more communication, better communication. So to me, that would suggest that many people, at the heads of these organisations need to be talking to each other. Maybe we need to lock them in a room to have a talk over a number of hours. But after that time, as consumers and with these teens, perhaps we need to say there needs to be some definitive decisions made, even if they're not perfect, because what is perfect? You're dealing with a lot of personalities here. These kids, as they outlined the thumbnails of these kids and what these kids were like, seemed beautiful children. But as you mentioned, they had been bullied, they had been exposed to violence in the home or in the schoolyard. There were so many things that came into account. So the heads of these organisations need to shake hands and make friends and talk about what needs to be done so that they're all part of a concerted effort to push down the same pathway, not these splinter groups that in essence are working against each other. And more than that, they are not working for the greater good of these kids because they are still attempting and taking their own lives.
Yeah, I mean, they're failing
Yes.
the most vulnerable. Sue Chapman, thank you very much for joining us this morning to give us some insights into this extremely tragic
Thanks,
case.
Michael.
We really appreciate it. That was psychologist Sarah Chatwin. Thank you very much for your time this morning.